everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Welcome to my video tutorial. Today I'm going to try to recreate this card for you. I'm calling this card Willow's Brew. This was a really fun card to make and I actually surprised myself. I'll explain that in a bit. Before we get started though, what I want to do is talk to you about our Facebook groups. There's a little confusion sometimes with our groups. We have two pages. We have the Del Bello's Design Lounge, and we also have the Del Bello's Designs a la carte. Now, in the lounge, that's where we showcase everything Lavinia, from stamps to stencils to inks to spray inks. Whatever the Lavinia product is, we showcase it here. Now, on the other page, that's where we showcase everything else, like Sweet Poppy, Nellie's, Cardio, any other product that is in the shop is showcased here. But sometimes you have a card that is a combination of all of the above. So you can put those on either page or put them on both pages. That way we all get to see what you've created. The other social media platforms that we are part of is Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. And if you want to find us in those locations, you just search hashtag Del Bello's Designs. Okay, back to this card. Let me go over the supplies that I used. And like all my other videos, if there's anything I forget to mention, I will try to point that out as we go on. Otherwise, it will be in the full description under this video. So the topper that we're using today measures 4 1/4 by 5 3/4 inches, and we will be working in the horizontal position with that. The card base itself will measure 6 by 9 inches and is scored at the 4.5 inch mark. The stamps that I'm going to be using today: Willow the Witch, LAV 194, the Tree Branch, LAV 506, the Bats, LAV 167, and in this set you get a small grouping of bats along with a single bat. The Bird Collection, LAV 756, the Bugs, LAV 156, and I'll be using that little guy right there. The Mini Dots, that's what you see coming out of the Brew, LAV 585. And lastly, the Fern Heads, LAV 470. Now the inks that I'll be using today: Elements Merlot, Lime Punch, and Graphite, VersFine Clair, Nocturne, Monarch, and Morning Mist. The stencil that I'm going to start with is a new one from Sweet Poppy. This one is called the Net Backplate, and as you can see, it just looks like a piece of netting, similar to fish netting. I will be using several different brushes, some blending brushes. You use your choice of blending materials. We all know there's lots of things you can use out there. I'll be using the Lavinia large stencil brush along with number 3, the small one. These are not necessary, but to be honest with you, it's so nice having them in your stash to be able to use. So for pens, I have a purple gel pen, which I'm not a real glitter person, but I do have a few things outlined with that gel. I have a black fine liner pen that I will be making the little string that the spider will be hanging from. A permanent marker that's black, just in case, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I have a white gel pen. And to be honest, the only thing I used the white gel pen for was a little highlighting on her scepter there. You will also need a piece of scrap paper. Copy paper works best. That's going to help with the grounding. And I believe, oh, one more thing. The adhesive that I like to use is the Art Glitter Designer Dry Clear adhesive. I'll use that to attach the topper to the card base. Always water to clean your stamps with. Make sure you're using a non-fibrous cloth, something like a microfiber cloth. And I will be stamping with my good old Misty here. Okay, let's get started. So I told you there was a little surprise when I created this card. I did not realize that this stencil, let me bring this back in, the net stencil actually matches the netting in her sleeves. Totally unaware of that. I wish I would have been able to actually say, oh yeah, I knew that. No, I did not know that. Okay, this is a horizontal card, like I said, but to start, I'm going to turn it vertically just because it helps me see what I'm doing. I'm placing this on an angle just to create a unique scene. You could do this any direction you wanted, whatever you're comfortable with. But for me, this is what I wanted to do. I'm just making sure that I have my spacing lined up pretty much like I did on my original card. Now, using the Sweet Poppy low tack tape, I am going to block off a section of my white card. Now, if you have a magnetic piece to work on with your Sweet Poppy stencils, you can use that. That definitely holds everything in place. But being that I'm using so little of this, the tape is going to suffice what I need. Now, this is where I used the Merlot. I'm going to come in with a blending brush, ink it up a little bit. As you know, or if you don't know, these are extremely juicy ink pads. So tap off excess. It's easier to start with a light coating and then add to it. Just so much harder to go in the other direction. So what I'm going to do is first apply a very light layer of this Merlot onto my card, and then I will slowly build. Now, there's an edge here of this stamp, so keep that in mind so that when you're building it, you don't get a real distinct line. Is it going to matter? Not really. It'll still be okay. But that's what I was thinking. I did not want that super distinct line. So what all I'm doing is drawing some of this color from the edge down towards the point. And I'll just repeat this until I get the shade of this Merlot that I want. Now, I think, as maybe you guys know, it's really hard to recreate something exactly as it's done originally, so I'm going to do my best here to get this close. So as you can see, as I'm moving my brush in a circular motion, and I start to apply pressure to get more ink, to just darken up the areas that I want darker. You can continue doing this in as many layers as you want. Again, this is just, you're going to do this to your liking. Okay. I like to move clockwise and counterclockwise. To me, it helps get most of that ink off of my brush. All right, I'm going to stop there, come in with the lime punch. I'm going to wipe this off a little bit. I don't want to contaminate my brush if I don't have to. Okay. And again, I'm going to tap off some of the extra. I don't want this to be too overbearing. So starting with a light layer. Now the mixing of green and purple is not ideal. That will create some brown. But I think in this card, to be honest, it's Halloween. It's okay. We can have some not so pretty colors. So So I'm gonna just add some more. I want a little bit more green here. This is kind of gonna be where her brew's coming up, so I want it to look a little yucky. All right, we're gonna stop there. And I'm going to remove the tape. Now what's nice about this Sweet Poppy tape is it doesn't tear your card. It's really gentle on your card. All right, there I have that started, that crazy looking net hanging. Now with your Sweet Poppy, let me just back up a second. These are not cheap to buy, I'm sure you all know that. This is how I clean them. I just give it a spritz with water, and then I dab my cloth, and you need to use a cloth. Don't try a paper towel. It'll shred your paper towel. And I just set this off to the side to dry. I make sure it's completely dry before I pack it away. All right, now we're gonna get that Misty in here, and we're gonna do some of our stamping. Let me make a little bit of room here. All right, I'm going to start with Willow. Now I have a sticky mat in here, something new that I'm trying out, just to see how this is gonna work for me. Let's get Willow here. I'm going to bring her in first, place her here. That looks pretty good, okay. And I'm going to tap some of that Nocturne ink all over Willow. I want to get a nice coating on her. Now, a lot of times when you're stamping on top of another color, you may have to stamp more than once if you don't have enough ink. It just takes practice. It just takes time. And be patient with yourself. You'll get it. Okay, let me get Willow here in place, and I'm just going to press her on firmly, hoping that I get nice coverage here. She is one of the better witches, I have to admit. I do like the look of her. All right, I'm very pleased with that coverage. I'm not going to have to stamp again. Now, if you don't have a Misty or a stamping platform of sorts, it's hard to restamp. So that's where you could use a black marker. Let's just imagine I didn't get a real clean stamped image. I could come in with a black marker and add to that and darken the area up, but I did okay this time around. Okay, so I'm gonna bring that cauldron in, and I'm going to add that so she can create her brew. Oops, that looks a little crooked. Let me realign that. Okay, that's a little bit better. That's more like it. Okay, let me add some ink here. All right, that looks good to me. So now she's ready. She can start doing her thing. These little dots, these mini dots are fabulous, fabulous. I'm going to start with the Misty and stamp the initial batch of bubbles. And then I'm going to just switch in a second here. So there's my initial batch. And I'm gonna try to get a second print up here. Okay, see, it's very light. That's exactly what I was going for. Now, let me just demo for you. This is an acrylic peg from Cardio. And I do like using these. There's a learning curve. I'm gonna say that much. There's a learning curve to using them, but they're nice when you want to squeeze in little places. So I'm just going to add, just for demo purpose, I'm just going to add a little batch here. I'm not pressing hard, just even, and that's great. Let me just do another one to take some of that ink away. Okay, there we go. So that's an option for you for stamping if you don't have a stamping tool. All right, next I'm going to come in with the bats. And I just want them to be flying randomly. So let me put a batch there. And I'm going to make these nice and dark. There we go. I'm going to clean this off because what I want to do now is to create, look at this one, bats flying off in the distance. They're going to be under the tree. So to do that, I'm going to use that same set of stamps again, and I'm going to use the Morning Mist. Now, this is an old Morning Mist. I like to save 2 ink pads of the same color. So I always save the oldest, and then I have a brand new one that's super moist and whatnot. But the oldest one, I just feel like I'm not wasting the ink if I hang on to it. And that way I get a lighter imprint of the stamp. And I don't feel as if I'm wasting a lot of the ink. Now, I am going to just blot this off a little bit. Just using a paper towel for that, because I really want a light image. And I'm not going to press real hard, just lightly. That's good enough. Let me clean this off with my damp towel. Now, I went ahead and I stamped the single bat on a piece of scrap paper. I fussy cut him out. And then I applied some foam tabs behind it. So when I'm finished here, I'll be able to add that 3D element. Now, not a lot of people like to fussy cut, and he is tiny to do so. And sometimes you end up with a white edge. That's when you go ahead and use that black marker and color in those edges so that it doesn't stand out. All right, let me set him down and we'll get to him in a little bit. All right, I'm going to grab that bird now that I'm using. And I like the looks of this one. Going to place him here near the cauldron. Using the Nocturne one more time. We're going to get him lined up. Pressed into place. Okay, he looks pretty good. Now let's move on to the tree. Now this tree branch, it's really versatile. Wow, this is an old one too, I have to admit. I've had this one quite some time. Now I'm going to have to work kind of in a wonky position here so that I can get everything to fit with my Misty. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to try to place, I don't want to cover up Willow here. I'm just going to place the branch from the corner. And again, I'm just using the Nocturne for all of this stamping at this point. Okay, let me turn it around so you can see. Then what I'll do is I'm going to get a little piece coming out from this angle. Let me spin this around. Get some ink on here. Okay, I need to wipe this off. I don't want to make any more smears. And now I'm going to have to rotate my card again so that I can get some more branches coming from the top. I just rotate the stamp into the position that I want to see those branches. Add some more ink. There we go. And then I'm going to do one last stamping of the branches. Okay, very simple, just to rotate your stamps around. Now you can still see those bats. They're hidden beneath the branch, and that's exactly what I wanted to see. So I could come back in, and I think I'm going to. This will be a little different than my original. I think I'm going to do just a little ghost print here. It seems that area's a tad bit blah for me, so I'm going to get a little bit in the background there and be happy with that. Let me get that cleaned off. All right, now I can choose where I want to put my spider. So I'm going to do the spider first, and then I'll draw the little line where he's hanging. That little bit of spider thread. So let me get him here. I'm going to give him a little twist on an angle. Again, it's just stamping in the nocturne. Nice little press. And then with the fine liner, all I do is draw a squiggly line. Let me shut this. I'm going to draw a squiggly line. I tend to turn my artwork towards me. That way, being left-handed, I don't drag my hand through wet ink. This is just more comfortable to me. So let me get that connected to the tree that he's sliding down from. So there, so far, there we are. Now the last thing we have to stamp are the fern heads. So let me grab those, and I'm going to be using the nocturne, or I'm sorry, not the nocturne. We're going to use the monarch for the fern heads. I wanted to try to even out some of that color at the top, at the in the bottom. So that's why I chose to do these in purple. Now I could have chosen to do those in the green. That would have been pretty cool too. But I'm going to stick with the original. Just going to do these fern heads. Get some ink on those. Press them into place. Then I want to get a second generation of the same fern heads off to the side. So without re-inking, just another stamp. And I would like to have a couple fern heads poking up here from the bottom. So as you can see, I'm just twisting my stamps to utilize portions of it in different areas. And yes, I did that backwards. Let me get the other one. I have a tendency to do that all the time. Okay, so there we go. All right, I'm pleased with that, and we're going to call that quits. Let me get this cleaned off. And I'm going to be finished with my Misty at this point. Let me get this cleaned off. And now we just need to put on a few finishing touches. And to start with, I am going to use my larger Lavinia stencil brush. I'm going to use the Morning Mist, and I'm going to just kind of create a fog around the entire card. So to do so, just tapping this in to my ink, the Morning Mist. I'm going to tap off and swirl to get that ink distributed well on my work surface. I'm even going to swirl on here. I just don't want to come in too heavy-handed initially. Remember, like I said, we can always add ink, but we can't take it away. So you come in light-handed, light amount of ink on the brush, and this helps keep those swirly marks away. So there, I'm going to add just a little bit, and I'm going to continue to work my way around just to create that smoky, foggy look all the way. And then you continue to add on as many layers as you want. So let's just take a look at it now and see where we're at. And you can see there is a drawing of your eye to the center. But the darker you make that perimeter, the more your eye is going to be drawn into the center. So I'm going to start again. I'm going to continue to use this morning mist, at least for this next layer. I'm going to add a little more pressure as I'm applying the ink. As you can see, I'm working in a circular motion again, all the way around. And I'm sure you've noticed that I always start off on my work surface with the ink. You can see how I'm getting these marks here. But that keeps you from getting too much of the ink on the edges of your card. So let's finish off this corner. Now I'm not worried that it's not super even. I definitely don't want this to be even at all. Because remember I said I want this to kind of look smoky, a little bit of haze. Okay, so now you can see how the center is starting to brighten up as everything on the outside darkens. I'm going to switch inks, and this time using the Nocturne, which is so much darker, right? So let me brush off the extra. Now, by putting 2 colors of ink on your edges, this really helps to create a lot of depth, a lot of dimension. I rarely use 1 color of ink when I am doing this type of framing. For me, it just looks better having that extra layer of ink. And again, like I said, you do this as much as you want. You can add as many layers of ink, darken those corners as much as you want. But this is how it goes. Slow and steady, and just continue to add your layers. So having that gray underneath, that morning mist, really creates that misty look, I believe. All right, I'm going to stop there. Don't want to bore you to death on that one. And what I'm going to do now is I am going to come in with that scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to create some grounding. And I want to create the grounding for Willow. And let me turn, remember I work the art coming to me. I'm going to place this a little bit on top of the bottom of her dress. I'm going to just use the ink that's on my workstation here. And I am going to just apply another layer. And even though it doesn't look as if anything's going on, when I remove this, you can see I've created a line for the ground. Now I want to create an area for the cauldron to sit on. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to let the feet stick out of the cauldron a little bit. I'm going to apply my ink. See, I'm just kind of dabbing here, swirling, dabbing, and there is some grounding for the cauldron. Now I also need to ground the bird. Same process, except this time I'm going to add a tad bit more ink. This is getting a little bit dry. Let me swirl this out and give him some ground to stand on. All right, so there we have the ground for everyone, but it's kind of blah to me. So what I want to do is I want to highlight and create more grounding under those 3 elements. And to do that, I'm going to use the small Lavinia brush. This is the number 3 brush. And I'm not too worried about matching up the exact spot that I used originally to create the ground. but close to it. Now with this, I am just going to let the smallest edge of this brush peek out, and I want to just create a much darker area just under her dress. So there you can see the difference between the original ground marks that I made and the grounding on her under her dress. I'm actually going to go in and add some ink in those pleats of her dress to even that up. Okay, now let me get a little more under the feet of the cauldron. Same idea. I'm just going to tap this, swirl it a little bit. I just want that area. It creates a shadow. You can think of it as that too. You see, it just gave a little bit darker than the ground itself. Let me get this a little more. That'll drive me insane. Okay, there we go. And one last is under the bird's feet. So let me just get a small area there to create a shadow. I hope you can see the difference between the original grounding and then me putting a little bit of a shadow there. Now, let me clean off this work surface. And I'm going to come in with that gel pen that I have. This is just a purple gel pen. You could use any color that you wanted. I am not the glittery person, as I said, but I can handle a little bit. So this is my attempt at a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some glitter to a few of these dots very randomly, and then I'm going to add a few of my own. And it just gives a little bit of interest. I'm not sure if the camera will pick up any of that glitter at all. And I'm going to add a little on the fern heads. I'm just going to trace around just random areas. No real reason why I'm picking where I'm picking, but just going to highlight with a little bit of this glitter. I'm sure those of you that love glitter, you could actually use glitter on this and really make it pop, but not my thing. Okay, so that's that. And I believe we just need to add two more little elements. One being the white, and I'm just going to try to highlight her scepter a little bit. And then I'm going to add the 3D element, the little bat that I fussy cut. Now, do you have to do this? No, but it's fun to see this. So what I like to do, even though this sticky foam is pretty sticky, there's no doubt, what I like to do is to add a tad bit of glue to those dots. And what that allows me to do is move it. It's not going to be stuck right away that if I want to move it, I'm going to rip my card. This just gives me a few seconds to move this if I don't like where I initially put it. And then when it dries, it'll be in good shape. It's going to be permanent. So there you have it. That card topper was pretty simple to make, not hard at all. And I think it's just, I think it's a great card. I think it's great for Halloween. I love the fact that that net matches the netting in her dress. So much fun. Now to finish off this card, all you have to do is bring in that card base. Fold that in half. You can use a bone folder, your finger, whatever you're comfortable with. Give yourself a nice crease. And then adhere this to the card. How cute is that, right? Darling cards. I think it's a great card for Halloween. Let's look at the original with this one. And hey, I didn't do too bad as far as copying it. Like I said, it's really hard to reproduce something exactly the same, but I think you got the idea here. Hey, have fun with this. Really think about that net stencil. It has a lot of potential. I think you could come up with some really creative ways to use that. If you decide to give this card a go, please do so. Have fun, get inky, get messy, have a great time putting it all together and creating a fun scene. Then I need you to tag me. Whatever page you want to put this one on, it would work. We've got a combination of Lavinia and Sweet Poppy things here. Great way to share with all of us in a group is posting your things. We all love and enjoy seeing what everyone has to make. Thanks again for watching. Truly appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.